So my old PTR-32 build in Delta Force is old and dusty, and I thought it was time to remake it, and people have been asking me to redo my PTR-32 build, so I thought it was time now more than ever to actually do it, with all the new players flooding in, potentially looking for weapons to use that they like. And I think the PTR-32 is actually a very, very powerful weapon that is somewhat underrated and underutilized. But yeah, today's video is going to be on the new build for this weapon. So starting off with a blank PTR-32 here, we're going to start off by changing the barrel. So you do have multiple options here, and while this one does look very appealing, the downside of this barrel is that it does reduce the fire rate. Now, if you're looking to build the PTR-32 more as a marksman rifle, this can function very well, but considering we want to keep the weapon on fully automatic, we're simply going to go with the G3 enhanced long barrel combo, giving you increased muzzle velocity, control, stability, cost of handling, and accuracy. But the accuracy is kind of moot for this build, so go ahead and install that. For the muzzle now, I swapped between the Whisper tactical suppressor and I believe it was the Bastion horizontal compensator I put on there. No, it was the titanium contest muzzle brake. So depending on how you feel the weapon is actually functioning for you, you might want to swap this out if you find it has a little bit too much recoil. Otherwise, this one gives you an extra 2 meters in range, does increase your control, cost of handling, stability, but the handling will make up for, as we will also make up for the stability. So it really depends on if you want to have a suppressor, the increased range, or a little bit better control on the weapon. I was mostly using the one with the Whisper tactical suppressor. For the foregrip, I went with the one that just gives you the most recoil control in this case, which is the X25U angled combat grip, because if we look at the recoil pattern here of the PTR-32, you can see there's a lot of variation here. Now, it's not so jarring, but still, that's a lot of recoil to actually control. So we want to mitigate that as much as possible, which is why I went with this grip. Now, for the mag, I felt like the downsides of the 40-round extended mag were too great for just 10 extra rounds. And these mags give you +6 handling, which is really, really nice, plus the mag assist as well. So if you downgrade or upgrade the round count to this one, you're getting -6, which is really affecting the handling of the weapon. So I just chose to go with this one because it looks nicer on this skin, but this one is exactly the same stats as well. So equip that and then put the mag mount on here as well. For the rear grip, you unfortunately only have 2 choices for the PTR-32, so the G3 skeleton grip and the PSG-1 rear grip. I chose to go with this one because I need a little bit of boost in stability for the build. So install that. For the stock here, I went with the Shadow buffer tube stock to really bump up the handling of the weapon. It cost us a little bit of stability, but we're going to make up for some of that, and it also gives you extra control as well as extra ADS movement speed, which is always a welcome addition. So install that. For the optic, regular optic for me, so just an RDS, you could put something a little bit more magnified on here if you're planning to use it on longer ranges, or if you just prefer a more magnified optic, maybe go for like a 2x, potentially something like that, maybe 2.5, which would be also very usable. For these 2 patches here, I simply put the KC Hound handguard panel to bump up the stability by 1 per patch, just so it's not in the negative and it doesn't, bounce all over the place when you're firing it. And finally, for the right rail to increase the ADS speed, I just put on the red laser on here. Put any one you want. If you don't want the increased ADS speed because you don't want to have the laser just shining and giving your position away, then you can just change it. For the calibration, the barrel, I went with +50 grams and -10 millimeters. The reason why I'm reducing the muzzle velocity is both the barrel and the Whisper tactical suppressor gave us increased muzzle velocity, so I felt like the -9% here was more than made up by those 2 attachments, and it was nice to have the extra ADS speed. For the foregrip, we're going to go with +5 slots and +20 millimeters to get extra stability when moving and extra control. The gun was pretty unstable overall, and I didn't want to bump down the stability when moving too much because then it just becomes basically impossible to use while you're actually moving. For the rear grip, we're going with -50 grams and -20 millimeters to get better hipfire aim speed, better aiming stability while breathing, and then we just basically did what we did with the foregrip here with that stability when moving, but it keeps it at a nice, like, even basically neutral to what was at the beginning before we started calibrating. For the stock, we're going with +50 grams, +3 slots, so we're getting extra firing stability and extra control. And then for the optic, as per usual, -20 millimeters in eye relief. So if we look at the stats real quick here of the PTR-32, now it's not the fastest TTK AR that the assault class has access to, but it is the fastest TTK AR if you're firing for headshots. So we can see here the damage model is 28, but if we look at the actual damage here, 28 damage to the thorax, the groin, the upper limbs, 22 to the legs and the shins, and then 53 damage to the head, which is absolutely massive. So if you get a headshot in there, it's taking you 3 shots to kill if you're aiming mid-mass, and obviously if you're getting 2 headshots, then it's a 2-shot kill weapon, which is just fantastic. For the control, we did put quite a bit of points in here, so plus 24. You can see it still deviates a little bit, but overall the weapon doesn't fire particularly fast, so it is pretty controllable. Even if it does, you know, do a right hand deviation and left hand deviation, it's still overall pretty manageable. For the handling, now this is actually really nice. So we did lose 5 points in handling, but considering we have a laser on here, it's actually at 311 milliseconds for the current ADS speed, which is actually faster than the default one, so that is pretty nice. For the stability, we didn't bump it up much, but you can see, you know, current lens firing stability is at 0.82x. Recoil reduction when holding breath is only 0.93x, which is not crazy, but it is a little bit better than the base stat. And then the current movement stability is 0.86x. And finally, for the accuracy, not the main focus of this weapon build, so, you know, it doesn't really matter in this case. And again, when you're close enough, it doesn't really matter. You're probably going to still down them, even if you're hip firing. Now, in order to use this PTR-32 build, you will need to level it up to 56, but this thing is an absolute powerhouse. If you're getting headshots with it, I think I would have to try and make a marksman variant of this PTR-32, because 53 damage per shot is absolutely wild, and it's basically 2 shots to kill with headshots, as it is with all the other marksman rifles, except maybe the Mini 14, and I think the VSS is actually a 2-shot to kill to the head as well. But yeah, it would be incredibly powerful having that barrel that gives you even more muzzle velocity at the cost of fire rate. But if you're using it mostly as a marksman rifle, it would, you know, perform very well. But yeah, the PTR-32 is a force to be reckoned with. 28 damage to the chest is nothing to scoff at, and then obviously the very high headshot damage with 53 damage per shot is just, you know, absolutely fantastic. And this weapon, as I said, even at those longer ranges, even if there is those deviations right and left, very easy to control because it doesn't fire super fast. And you also wouldn't expect this weapon to actually be able to ADS that quickly. It's close to like a 300 millisecond ADS speed, which is absolutely great. And I really wanted to keep it snappy because I was playing quite aggressive with this thing, and it was absolutely a blast to do so. And even at, again, 50 meters out, you're probably going to still be beaming people without too many issues to control that recoil. So overall, just a very fun weapon to use, very underutilized. You don't see a ton of people using it, but I like big, punchy, chunky weapons, so the PTR-32 fits that bill very well. So as per usual, the weapon share code will be in the description down below as on the top pinned comment, and soon I will be revamping the G sheets that I have with all the different weapon builds. A community member that was nice enough to rebuild it for me, so I will shout him out. His name is Tugainuk. I hope I didn't butcher the pronunciation of your name. But yeah, he redid the whole G sheets, and I'll be implementing that into the one that I'm sharing with everybody. So again, huge thanks to him for actually working on that. And yeah, I'll leave you a few highlight clips of me using this specific build. In any case, hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And as always, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.
Enemy located!